have something a little bit different for you with this film, which looks at the incredible vehicle collection of Rodger Dudding, based in Hertfordshire and known as Studio 434. I recently spent some time chatting with Rodger, but even picking out selected highlights of the collection would have led to a week-long video, so this is really just a whistle-stop tour. While much of the collection is fairly mainstream, there's no shortage of below-the-radar material in there too. And with the more obscure stuff, I've added some captions so you can work out what some of these obscurities are. In doing my best to show you some of the weird and wonderful machinery in Rodger's collection, sometimes the visuals don't quite match the dialogue. I had to do it this way or the video would have gone on for hours, such as the volume of cars to cover. Hopefully, this film will inspire you to take a look at the collection for yourself. So be sure to book a slot with a load of mates and go to see the incredible selection of cars that Rodger has amassed over more than half a century. Until about 10 years ago, Studio 434 was arguably one of the best kept secrets amongst car enthusiasts. It was founded by Rodger Dudding, and it's now rather better known than it ever was, thanks to quite a lot of coverage in the mainstream media. How did it all start?
Really, I suppose the origin was I started collecting cars. I'm an engineer for my sins, and I had a number of cars at home, and my late wife got a little bit fed up with the number of cars I had there, so I bought these premises here, which ironically enough, this building is the old tram shed for Potters Bar Transport Corporation. So,
but you don't own any trams, just cars?
I don't own any trams, no. But so historically, it's gone back to its original usage for vehicle storage.
And how many cars have you got here?
In this building alone, probably about 120, I suppose. Overall, our collection is now circa 450 classic vehicles, dating from a 1900 Model T Ford right the way through to comparatively the latest Rolls or Bentley or Ferrari or whatever the case may be.
So where and when did it start? What was the first car you bought and how did you end up with 450 cars?
The first car I bought and fell in love with was a Jensen Interceptor, the Ferguson Formula four-wheel drive vehicle, which, as you know, came from Harry Ferguson, the inventor of the tractor. And I liked the technology of it and the engineering. So that was my first car in real terms, and I kept it.
And when did you buy that? Oh,
probably about 1968. I think the car itself is 1966. So right. I bought it second-hand in about 68.
So the collection started in the late 60s?
Yeah.
And how did you get from there to 450 cars?
I suppose being in a fortunate situation, if I've seen something I like, I buy it. It's as simple as that. There's no particular science. I have not gone out to collect a given series of motor vehicles, be they Rolls or Bentley or Ferrari, what have you. It's just that if I like something, and I'm in a fortunate enough situation, I buy it.
And what do you like? I know you like Aston Martin Lagondas because you've got 23 of them, I think.
24.
20, oh, right, okay, I've been misinformed.
Allegedly the largest...
Because 23 aren't enough, clearly.
Allegedly the largest collection of wedge Lagondas in the world. I met William Towns, the designer of them, on a number of occasions, and to my mind they are extreme. They are a unique motor vehicle. So I just bought one after the other, and now in our collection we're fortunate enough to have the very first one made and the very last one made.
All right.
Of William Towns wedge Lagondas, and I think they're just gorgeous. It's an acquired taste, really.
Extreme is one word for them, yeah, and 24 is also a pretty extreme number to have. What's the appeal? Just because they're so bizarre?
Yeah, I suppose it's the origination of the design, of the concept. There's nothing like it, even to this day. There's nothing that you compare a wedge Lagonda to. It is quite unique.
And looking around the collection, it's eclectic to say the least. There's every era, every nationality, every price point, but there is a fairly strong focus on British. Lots of Bentleys, lots of Jensens, quite a few Jaguars. Do British cars hold a particular appeal, or I mean, what's the rationale behind your buying?
I suppose nothing really specific. I'm sort of quite nationalistic, and hence the veering towards British manufacture, though one has to admit nowadays there's few cars which are British manufacture, or they're a hybrid from here and there, and it's just a question. But if we go back to the 1960s or pre-60s, then there were so many British cars on the road. We went to Australia or South Africa, it was mainly British cars were there. Then for some inexplicable reason we lost those markets due to lack of salesmanship or technology or what have you, and we allowed, and we did allow it because our own stupidity, people like Japan or China or Korea to step in and fill that void. If you now take one of our most historically famous brands, the MG, that is now foreign owned, and I think it's almost sacrilege that we've allowed these things to happen. You have certain vehicles which tick the box as far as I'm concerned, such as the range of Mercedes, that they're superbly engineered machines. And then we go to the other end of the spectrum, and a car I've always loved as the Topolino, the Fiat 500. To my mind, it's cute. It's a pretty little car. It does everything it says it does on the tin. In fact, I bought one for my late wife all those years ago, and it's just a gorgeous looking little car. It's got something about it.
450 cars is obviously quite a collection. Do you have favourites? Are there any that stand out that you're particularly pleased to have bought?
My absolute favourite, and it's an old story, if the building was on fire, which one would you save, was purely emotional. My late father was an engineer in the Royal Navy, which I followed in his footsteps, and he bought new in 51, I think it was now, a Morris Minor 803 side valve, which he just adored. And the standing joke at home was the old man, I use the word with affection, would send mother a telegram, say coming home 2 weeks from now or something for a couple of weeks, tell Roger to get the Morris sorted out. So I'd duly get his beloved Morris Minor out of the garage and wash it and check it all over, and then father would arrive in his chauffeur-driven Humber limousine motor vehicle, and he's already to drive his Morris, and he sort of dismissed his chauffeur, off he went, and then we got the Morris ready to come out the garage, and it started to rain. So the old man told us to put the car back in the garage so it didn't get wet, and he contacted his chauffeur and told him to bring back the Humber, his company naval staff car, as it were. So I couldn't say with 100% definity, but I'm 99% certain the old man's Morris Minor has seen rain 4 or 5 times in its life since it was built in 51.
So it's more than 70 years old, and it's been in the family from new?
Yeah, it's been totally new, and when father died, in his will, he left the Morris to my younger sister, and there was no way I could have her driving father's beloved car, so I bought her a car of equivalent value, and I put the Morris into our collection, and we have it to date, as it were. But that is my most treasured motor vehicle, purely emotional, but there we are.
Have you ever sold a car?
Very few, very few. I've sold a couple of wedge Lagondas to people who wanted to add them to their collection, so I've reduced my collection down, I think it's to 24. And there's 1 or 2 others, and in all honesty I can't remember what they are, but I have sold where somebody's offered me a price I could not afford to ignore.
I'm guessing because you're pretty well known in collector circles, a lot of cars find you now. You don't have to go out looking for stuff. People come to you and say, would you like to buy this?
Yeah, you are correct, yes. We have a lot of people approach us with vehicles and say, do you want to buy this? And so often they have a very long history that it belonged to a person's father or mother of the 1920s and 1930s, and we bought it. And that follows on that probably once every couple of months we'll have a phone call from a party who says, we understand you might have motor vehicle XYZ, it belonged to my grandfather, could I come along and have a look at it? Which of course we say yes, and that happens probably half a dozen times a year at least, and it's rather nice to reunite.
Now, I'm right in thinking that your collection often appears in TV programmes, they're hired out for film use?
Yeah.
So what might we recognise from your collection that's been on the small screen and the big screen?
Oh, I think we have quite a variety, and such major films as The Crown and Mr. Selfridge and so on and so forth. Our cars appear in a lot of those programmes, and you get the producers getting in contact with us and saying, have you got an ABC? Yes, we have. Well, we want to hire it for a few days or a couple of weeks or something to be shot in this feature film, which of course is great, and it helps fund the collection, because as you can well imagine, this is a very, very expensive operation. Not only the cost of the building, but the rates and local taxes, and to maintain these vehicles. And all our vehicles are operational. Now, we have an in-house mechanic, and he works on a rotor system, going around all the vehicles, checking them over, and if it's a nice dry day, they go out for a 10-mile run around the block, as it were, and then are tucked up again.
Are you still buying cars?
Only if we see something exceptional. I've got so many vehicles, as you know, and with Anno Domini Martin, relentlessly on. Unfortunately, I can't stop the clock, and I haven't driven a car now for probably about 18 months due to eyesight and what have you, and it'd be rather silly of me to take some of these vehicles out. But when I used to race cars and race motorbikes, I still would like to get behind that wheel or put my leg over on a motorbike and go roaring off down the road in it. But no, I've had to call a halt to those activities.
So you said there's only 120, 130 cars in this building. You've built another building, essentially a huge warehouse on the other side of the road. So that houses the rest of the collection, presumably.
Correct.
Okay, and you mentioned a third building now.
Yeah, we've got another building again on the industrial estate in Potters Bar, where we have now created 3 film studios. So we have Studio 1, Studio 2, Studio 3, which we rent the studios out to filmmakers, and if by chance they want a motor vehicle, it's fortuitous that we can provide them, not only with the studio, but with the car and the background information.
Well, there's only 450 to choose from.
Exactly.
Unfortunately. I gather that as well as film and TV studios hiring your cars, the Mayor of London borrowed one at one point, and it was a certain Boris Johnson, but he didn't want something British. He borrowed a Citroen DS Drophead.
Yeah,
how did that come about?
We were contacted by his office when he was Mayor of London.
Yeah.
That he was going to open the two-way traffic in Pall Mall when it was previously one-way, made two-way. So he wanted to do the inaugural drive, and we were contacted by the Beeb as to what cars he could drive. So we said, well, pretty varied selection you want. It then transpired that Boris Johnson had a particular affinity with Citroen. And I did say to him, I said, well, it's not being very bloody nationalistic. You should be choosing a British car. No, I want a Citroen. So we have a DS21 Decapito, the convertible, right-hand drive, and it is the only one in Europe, right-hand drive to Capito. So we loaned it to the Beeb for the day for Johnson to drive off into the sunset in our rather lovely Citroen.
And I gather that you have a particular affinity for Clino, and you've got several Clinos in the collection, and yet Clino is one of those marks that's pretty much forgotten. What's the fascination with Clino?
Well, the fascination with Clino is, again, late father had one during WW2 when I was about 5 or 6 years old, and I've always loved tinkering with cars. So I used to help father when he's home on leave, start the Clino up. Well, it did have a self-start, but no, really you had to crank the thing to turn it over, what have you. And father loved his Clino, so I went into the history of them, and the time I was, 14 or 15, I'd bought my own Clino, albeit I couldn't drive it on the public road, and I've now got several Clinos. Very unusual. And ironically enough, I'm told there are more Clino motor cars in Australia than there are in Britain, because that was one of our biggest markets.
Right.
And we exported Clino to Oz. I think it's down to the quality of the engineering, that it could withstand the heat and the trials and tribulations of Oz while the car was so sought after.
And Clino was a 1920s brand, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did it survive into the 30s?
It survived until, if my memory serves me correct, until 1934.
Right.
Then it folded, which again is a tragic example of an iconic British car that did not survive.
And yet it was one of the biggest brands in the UK at the time.
At the time. You had the three big brands. One was Clino, the other one was Austin, and the other one was Morris. And Austin and Morris continued, but Clino unfortunately succumbed to the ravages of the market.
What was the last car that you bought?
The last car I purchased was at a naval charity function, which I'm a member of, and rather interesting enough, they put up for auction a brand new Rolls-Royce Wraith, which had been donated by Lady Martin, the widow of the late Sir George Martin. So he died some years ago now, as you will know, and Lady Martin decided that the Wraith that she had constructed in memory of her late husband, and it's all on the internals of the car, it's all engraved or embroidered with all Sir George's songs on the upholstery, on the kick plates, on the doors, on the faces, on the roof lining. So that came on the market up for sale at this charity auction. So we purchased it for the collection, which we still have in the collection.
Well, I discovered this incredible collection a few years ago through a group that I'm in, a club, and since then the popularity of Studio 434 has mushroomed, and it's become a bit of a go-to place for clubs now. It's not free anymore, it used to be, but the cost of running everything has gone through the roof, so there's now a small charge. But if you want to arrange something for your club and you want to come and see the collection, go to studio434.co.uk and book your place, and I can assure you it's very much worth your time. In the meantime, many thanks to Rodger Dudding for his time and the chat now, and I really would urge you to come and look at Studio 434 for yourself, because it's incredible.